everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started as it is 6:01. First order of business, please take a look at the community statement in our chat. We ask that you stay respectful to our presenters during their presentations and to our community at large. We have things set up as a webinar style, but please engage with us through the chat function as well as the Q&A for our panelists. Again, thank you for joining us this evening for our fall mobility show and tell session, Lessons Learned in Mobility Pilots. In partnership with Michigan Central Station, Ford Motor Company, and Bamboo Detroit, we bring 3 wonderful mobility startups from across the world to you this evening. Each will take a few minutes to share their experiences and lessons learned while piloting their mobility technologies. When they are finished, we will open it up for Q&A for 5 minutes after the presentation. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. You can do this as soon as the presenters start speaking, as well all the way up through their end of their presentation. We will address them when they're all done. In total tonight, we have 3 startup presentations to be kicked off first, though, by an overview from our friends at Michigan Central, and then we'll conclude with a presentation from our friends at the MEDC, who will be sharing their mobility grant open applications with us. To get us started, we welcome Roshni from the Michigan Central team, who's going to share the latest updates with the Michigan Central project.
Great. Thank you, Allison, and our friends at Bamboo for helping us pull this together. I'm sorry, I'm getting a note that I can't share my screen while other participant is sharing. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. So I'm from the Michigan Central team. My name is Roshni Shokar, and I lead startup and entrepreneur engagement for the district. So some of you may be aware, but just to provide a little overview, Michigan Central is a mobility innovation district that Ford is building in the historic neighborhood of Corktown in Detroit. So Ford bought the historic train station a few years back, and we've been renovating it along with buildings around the area in order to create an innovation campus. And this is not just a Ford campus. This is actually going to be a place for other startups, innovators, entrepreneurs, other large companies to come work together and innovate, because we know the future of mobility is not something that we can solve alone. And there's going to be a lot of partnerships that help bring the future to fruition. So we're really excited about these spaces coming to life. The first building is set to open in the summer of next year, and then the other buildings will kind of follow suit. To give you an idea on some of the things that we've been doing so far, we have started building up a mobility community and started to have some programming for startups. So one of the first things we've done is the Accessible Street Studio in partnership with a company called New Lab from Brooklyn. And so through this studio, we've kind of brought a cohort of startups along that are working on solutions that are improving the neighborhoods in Detroit and helping people move around more easily. And these pilots are actually going to be launching in the next few weeks. So keep an eye out if you're in Detroit. There's some really cool solutions there. And if you want to learn more, you can visit the website or email this email address. And then we've also been hosting several events with our partners at Bamboo, a mix of panels and show and tell series like these. So you can actually visit the Michigan Central website --news to see any of our past recordings if you missed anything and you're interested in learning more. And this is also where we post our upcoming events. So we'll have something coming in the next month or two. So you can visit that to stay posted. And then lastly, I just wanted to share all the different ways that you can connect with us. If you're interested in staying in the loop about Michigan Central or learning more, we have a newsletter that goes out monthly and a number of ways you can connect. So please take a screenshot, follow up if you have questions. My contact information is on here as well. And if you're a startup interested in learning more, I'm happy to talk to you. So thank you everyone for joining, and I'm going to pass it on to our first speaker. We're really excited to hear from you all.
Thanks so much, Roshni. Every time it gets more interesting. And I'm really excited that we could potentially have this event that we're having right now inside the central station here, maybe in the next couple of years. I would like to introduce our very first speaker, Josh, who is the founder and CEO of SparkCharge, a company that is creating on-demand charging infrastructure for electric vehicle owners and their portable ultra-fast charging unit.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Going to go ahead and share my screen. Awesome. So super excited to be part of this program. Very excited to be talking to everyone today about the exciting news that we're working on here at SparkCharge. At SparkCharge, we're creating the world's first mobile and intelligent on-demand EV charging network. And what we mean by that is the fact that we believe that electric vehicle owners should be able to have their car charged anytime and anywhere they want, regardless of geographic region, weather, or time. When we think about electric vehicle adoption, our mission here at SparkCharge is to remove those barriers and obstacles holding people back from electric vehicle adoption and electric vehicle ownership. We believe that if you can remove the where, when, and how out of EV charging, you can help grow the electric vehicle market at a much faster rate. When we look at the electric vehicle market right now, it's easy to see that there are a lot of problems in the market, especially when it comes to infrastructure. If you talk to automakers, they'll always tell you there's not enough charging stations, meaning the lack of infrastructure. If you talk to EV owners, they'll say, well, no one wants to sit at a charging station for 4 to 6 hours. And if I rent a car in Boston and I own that same car in California, my mileage is different based on the terrain and weather. Charger accessibility is another option that's been popping up with 25 to 35% downtime across DC fast chargers in America, meaning 25 to 35% of the time that you show up to charge your car, that charging station is either inoperable, blocked, or broken. And then there's the hard truth that 80 to 90% of Americans live in apartments, condos, high-rise, and townhomes. We don't live in a 2-car garage with, a power wall that you might see in a typical electric vehicle ad. And so because of that, EV charging can become even more difficult. But at SparkCharge, we have the solution, a network that's built for electric vehicle owners and by electric vehicle owners. Electric vehicle owners can now have range delivered to them via our solution. Our solution is ChargeUp, the world's first mobile charging network and mobile charging platform. An electric vehicle owner can select how much range they want, choose the time, choose the location, and have it delivered all with the push of a button. Essentially, we make charging easy. You can now have your car charged at home. You can have it charged at the office. You can have it charged on the go. It now eliminates the need to hunt and find charging stations, and it's easy to use, and it's subscriber-based. We're initially focused on EV owners and EV fleets, completely revolutionizing the way that people typically think about EV charging. Now with ChargeUp, a fleet owner can say, I have 10 cars all dispersed, and send range to all 10 cars at the same time, charging them without ever having to have them come back to a central location or a hub. An EV owner can now have their car charged while they're sitting at work, doing work, and now without having to go in and plug in to charge their car, essentially creating an on-demand network that's always available and ready when the EV owner needs it. ChargeUp is currently up and running in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Dallas, where we've been able to deliver a lot of miles to EV owners. In fact, in the last 3 months alone, we've delivered over 30,000 miles of range to EV owners, and we're on track to deliver over 100,000 miles of range to EV owners before the end of the year. We've also been able to save roughly around over $1 million grams of CO2 pollution saved, and we believe we will save roughly over 4 million by the end of the year. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and pitch and talk about our solution, and we're excited to grow ChargeUp nationwide. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh, for the great presentation of SparkCharge. I have some questions around, where did you come up with the idea? What was the pain point that inspired you?
Yeah, so the pain point that inspired us, when we first started out, we really worked with a lot of roadside companies, and we were selling to them. So we struck deals with Allstate, AAA, Jarrow, you name it. And then we said, well, you guys are servicing this roadside industry, but upon working with the OEMs, we realized that the big issue was convenience. So we really said, well, let's go after this $1 billion market of convenience charging, where an EV owner can basically have range delivered to them wherever they want. When we first started out, we said, let's go out. We said, if we could successfully deliver 2,000 miles of range to EV owners, then we had struck gold. Within the first 3 months, we delivered over 30. We're now actually delivering somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 miles to EV owners every week in those 3 cities.
Wow, that's a lot. David from our audience asked you, Josh, where are you in your fundraising event journey?
Yeah, so we are actually in the process of raising our Series A, and I believe we'll be closing it in the next, I think, 30 days or so. We are about to close on a $20 million Series A.
Congrats, that's huge. What will you do? What are some of the major milestones you hope to accomplish with that raise or that deployment of capital?
Yeah, so we're going to scale the Charge Up network. So basically we operate in 3 cities now. But one of the things that has really, evolved from operating in those 3 cities and launching this service is the fact that we realized that OEMs have actually started to want to incorporate this service into the sale or service of their vehicle. So over the next coming months, we'll actually be revealing a couple of OEMs that actually, when you go in to buy the car, the Charge Up subscription service is baked in. And so now when you go in to buy the car, essentially your charging is covered before you drive off the lot. No need to install a charging station, no need to live in a home. It's now done on your phone. And so our raise will really go to help us push forward those projects and scale our network.
Oh, that's great. How much would I, if I were to sign up, pay for the subscription to participate?
Yeah, it's super simple. It's $25 a month for the basic and $50 a month for the premium.
Perfect. And different between basic and premium, like high level?
So $25 a month gets you roughly 150 miles a week delivered. $50 a month gets you about 300 miles a week delivered. So we always like to say, the $50, the premium users, those are like the power users. Those are the guys who, they need range every single, almost every day. So we're really excited about that.
That's awesome. David from our audience asked, are there any competitors that you have out there in the marketplace right now?
Currently not. We are the only portable ultra-fast electric vehicle charger on the market. So we developed the technology that allows this network to enable, and then we are the only on-demand charging service on the market as well. So right now, no competitors. The closest competitor we have is a gasoline generator that's hooked up to an EV charger. So
a little different. Yeah.
If you burn dinosaurs to charge your EV, you can go that
route. That's great. Eileen from our audience said, congrats on gaining, garnering that investment from Shark Tank. How would you describe the experience and what occurred after SparkCharge made their appearance?
Yeah, everywhere we go, we get asked about Spark.
I'm sure.
Shark Tank. Yeah, so Shark Tank was great. We struck a $1 million deal in front of about 3.6 million people tuned in to the season opener. We struck a deal with Mark Cuban and Lori Grenier. A lot of people don't know Mark Cuban actually owns 4 Teslas. So he's a very big electric vehicle fan and supporter. And after we struck that deal, we went into diligence, made it through diligence, and then we started working together on how do we grow the company. I think a really cool thing about Mark is he'll actually respond to an email in under 30 minutes.
Oh, that is really cool. And that says a lot about having him on your investment team for sure. Melissa from the audience asked, do you have a target demographic or user group that you're kind of narrowed in on?
Yep. So what we've seen is the fact that a lot of times, the people who really use this app a lot are the ones who live in apartments, condos, high rises, and still want to own an electric vehicle. Or they're the ones that don't have charging at their house or at their job. And so what we've really been able to do is kind of pinpoint those type of demographics. And then the other subset is people who want to, basically not be tied to that leash of always having to be near a charger. And so, we have a guy in Texas who calls us every Saturday to an IHOP. And while he's eating his pancakes, we charge his car. And so we've seen this large group of EV owners that just want to have the freedom to charge wherever they're at along their journey or through their daily routine. And so we've been really excited to see that demographic grow of these, call it interesting places that EV owners are saying, yeah, just please come charge me here.
Yeah, kind of on that interesting places. Pushkar in the audience asks, will you guys come to super remote places to charge a vehicle? Like kind of what's your range now and what do you hope it will be?
Yeah, we cover about a 25 to 35 mile radius around a city when we enter it.
Okay.
So, to put that in layman terms, we'll cover everything from downtown Dallas to Waxahachie, Texas, right?
Okay.
You can get as far out. We do cover a lot of areas. And then one of the things that we've also realized is that we actually figured out that we actually cover more charging deserts than any other network. So because we have such a wide area and because we can have a network up and running in a city almost instantly, we've started to receive calls from areas that were pretty much underrepresented. So were areas that were low income or areas that were underrepresented that didn't have infrastructure. Now EV owners that live in those areas can actually have that infrastructure on demand. So I think, that was actually a really cool data point that came out, is that we actually cover a wide enough area to actually cover a lot of these charging deserts around towns as well.
Yeah, that's great. Another question from the audience. What would be your ideal exit for SparkCharge if you could wave a magic wand at this point?
Yeah, you never know. We work with a lot of companies, both big and small. So you never really know what the exit. I think our goal right now is just to charge as many cars as possible, and then if an exit should present itself, then we'll address it then.
Sounds great. One more question or maybe two. Has SparkCharge approached any of the OEMs to pitch their services as an add-on benefit to consumer vehicles? Similarly how GM did with OnStar and that partnership.
Yes, so we can't release yet the OEMs that will be incorporating this, but yes, so before the end of the year, I believe you'll hear about 2 or 3 that we should be able to actually incorporate this service into it. And so when you go in to either buy or pre-order that EV, you will get 6 months to a year of charge up baked in as the service. So that's something we're really excited about. And then we've actually now seen it move beyond the OEM level to where can you get this as part of your insurance package? So if you insure with a certain insurer, then they'll cover 6 months to a year of charging. We've seen it now also get baked into financing. So if you choose a certain financer, when you go to finance your vehicle, they'll cover 6 months to a year of charging as well. So the area, beyond OEMs of having this service available to electric vehicle owners grows daily. And that's something that we're really exciting about. It's truly a network and platform that can almost be baked in to anything to service the EV owner. And so that's something we're really glad.
That's great. I guess this will be my final question for you. You've done wonderful. Thank you. A lot of us here in the audience are fellow founders or wannabe founders who are, looking at ways to deploy and pilot their different technologies. Are there any specific resources, when you were rolling this out that you thought looking back that you didn't know you needed, but looking back, you would say, I would definitely focus on that or try to do that?
Yeah, I would say be patient. This is something that we, when we first started the company, our goal was let's just make this amazing portable charger to give EV owners freedom, right? And it's really, evolved into now its own network, into now, being baked into almost the life of the vehicle, which is amazing. I would say my biggest advice is be patient. I think as founders, one of the things earlier on that I know I was always guilty of is like move as fast as possible. Let's just get it out the door. But when you move fast, you break things. And sometimes that actually sets you back instead of moving you forward. So especially in our area with hardware, you don't want to break things. So,
Yes.
that would be my advice.
Oh, awesome. And one final note, does SparkCharge have any available opportunities for pursuing these careers?
Yes. So we will be hiring, I believe, somewhere close to 30 people over the next, I believe, 4 months. And those will be careers in engineering, everything ranging from, engineers such as mechanical, electrical, software, embedded systems. We'll also be hiring technicians as we move into expansion cities. We'll be expanding into about 3 more cities over the next 4 months as well. And so we'll be hiring in those cities. We have a belief that if you are going to operate in a city, you should impact that city for the better. And so we believe in doing that by hiring in those cities so that the people that are servicing the people that are servicing those vehicles operate and know that city. They're servicing their community.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for joining us this evening. Great tips on starting your business, scaling it. And we hope that one of those cities here soon is in our backyard here in Detroit. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. And thank you to New Lab and the Mobility Studio for recommending me. So I'm excited to hopefully one day be in Detroit with this service soon.
Oh, that's great. Next up, we're going to welcome Natalie, who is the founder and CEO of Briometrix, technology for people who use wheelchairs through accessible route mapping and accessible footpath assessments.
Okay, I just need to having a bit of a block here.
Oh, no worries, we can help you out. And if you could turn on your camera, that would be awesome.
All okay?
We're back to seeing your next slide, but it works. Thank you.
All right. Is that okay, Alison? Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Briometrix. And what we do is we map the cities and footpaths and transport networks for the walking and the wheeled pedestrians. So our maps show the connectivity and the effort and the access to enable everyone to get to where they need to go. So I want you to imagine for a second, imagine if Google Maps didn't work for you, especially if you had somewhere unfamiliar to go. So like cities can be really difficult to navigate, especially if you add age and mobility issues. So they can become like an obstacle course and a maze all in one. And this actually happens for 30% of the population. But if you imagine it was your responsibility now to resolve that. So you've got hundreds and hundreds of miles of sidewalk, you have a limited budget, you have low tech, you have new pressures coming in. How are you going to be actually able to go about resolving that problem? So sidewalks, we understand, were not so much about now. They were built for walking, but now sidewalks have a new particular problem. We're aware of our mobility scooters and we're aware of our wheelchair users, but now sidewalks have a new customer. And this new customer is those who are the recreational vehicles and the business vehicles. So there's a new set of wheels that are coming into town. And these set of wheels are on our sidewalks, but they were never intended to be built for this kind of traffic. So when we look at it, and we look at our sidewalks, we've come through this revolution of it being built for those, the walking pedestrian, who doesn't really have a problem with connectivity, with effort, and with access. But when we move to people who are now push and power devices, personal, business, or recreation, there's two things that are hitting them that are making it difficult to get around, and that's effort and that's connectivity. Let me take you through and talk about effort and connectivity. Okay. So when we talk about a footpath, most of the time people talk about it being, or sorry, I should say sidewalk, they talk about it being a smooth area. So when you talk about connectivity, if you think about it, it's like mind the gap. If there's a gap, anyone who has limited mobility and traveling on wheels can't get through. When you think about effort, and even when everyone asks you, like, why is everything an effort? You think of things that it's too hard, I've got to make an effort, it's a bit exhausting. So when you're looking at effort and sidewalks, you're looking for people, it's their power source, and their power source for people is their bodies, and the power source for vehicles is actually their batteries. So these are the two issues that we have to come and consider when we're trying to move around our city now to look after that 30% of the population. So what I'd like to show you is how that works out. What we have done is we've created the technology to be able to measure effort and connectivity and access around a city. So we've worked with Brio Scout, which is a motion sensing technology. We connect this to our wheelchair users. Now, the reason why we use wheelchair users is because it's a couple of reasons. They have the lived experience, which is fantastic. They are the most demanding on a footpath. Their vehicles that they use are actually really sensitive and work very well with our technology. And they can actually travel on every sidewalk, which is terrific. So what we're doing is working with them so we can look at with our, what we call them our wheelchair pilots, Our wheelchair pilots can really map around about 50 miles in 2 weeks. So I'd like to give you an example of one of the case studies that we worked on. So this is Melbourne, Australia. This is our sports and our arts precinct. Now, you may not have visited Melbourne, Australia, but by looking at this map, by looking at it as an effort map, you can instantly see around the arts precinct, it's pretty easy to get around, but around one of our big major stadium areas where there's a lot of orange and red and black, which shows areas where it's tough and difficult and caution, people have to really do quite a bit of calculation to be able to get into that area. So Public Transport Victoria asked us to map this area because they had 2 issues. They couldn't work out what was turning people into non-users. And the other thing is they have to work with councils and parklands and to actually be able to resolve these footpath network problems. So what they wanted to do was have data that was almost instantaneous that could show people these are the efforts. One of the things that does help, and we've tested it out now with a lot of our community, is by actually showing this map, it creates the it creates the experience we wanted. From people sort of saying, I don't know if I can do that, to looking at this map and saying, okay, I can find my way around it. The maps are a great visualization for people to be able to choose how to navigate. The second thing we did with them is, and this is when we start to look at, this is one of our dashboards. So now we're actually digging down deep for Public Transport Victoria and showing them all the areas where we have difficulties with connections. And so, and any area where we're having these hazards is breaking up the connectivity. The difference that we're looking at here is from the old way of when we used to look at the footpath network, it was all about the assets and longevity. What we're looking at now is saying, let's find the routes that get us from the transport stops to where we have to go, whether that be the stadium or the arts precinct, and choose changing things in the footpath network based on destinations. So there's always going to be a situation, as we said earlier, cities can't fix everything. Cities will never have the budget to be able to fix everything. So what we have to do is charge the areas where the routes are of the least effort to get around, which encourages people to get in, and give them the choice of choosing the routes to move through. So what's been happening so far with this journey? We've been able to show city planners just a new perspective about how people can move around the city. We've actually proven that the footpath network needs its own navigation system and been able to turn people from non-users into users. And what's this mean for a city? What we forget about, with that 30% of the population, you're now actually starting to attract things like accessible tourism, which is worth billions in the United States as well in Australia. We're building our cities to be age-friendly. It's actually footpaths for all, but also really importantly, when these delivery vehicles, these e-scooters, these hoverboards now want to be moving around the city, they actually can choose the pathways that are best for them. And we can encourage and welcome that kind of growth coming into a city. So as a startup, there's always the done right, do differently, and you always never get to leave that position. So some of the things we learned at Briometrix, number one was we were concentrating very hard on our customers. The footpath the sidewalks and for the councils and for the park authorities. So we were engaging them, but we didn't realize the community actually is very strong in rallying behind us. We found areas like the Heart Foundation, which is all about walking. We found mental health, which is all about getting people out and about, pedestrian safety. All these big associations were actually sitting behind waiting to support us. And we could have called on them a lot earlier in the picture and got a lot more support. The second thing we went through was talking to all our stakeholders. Once again, the people who were calling us in were loving the product, but we had to remember we had to operationalize this product with different organizations. So very early on, we'd missed out the opportunity to talk to people who were, for example, hosting the websites and putting the maps up on the websites, talking to the GIS departments, which were also housing all the data that we collected. So instead of now, when we start a new project in a city, what we do is we go and talk to these stakeholders first, which means it's a much quicker process to get everything completed for the city. And the last was what we found was about letting others in. So it's always great as a startup to tell everyone your story. So great ideas come from sharing it. And so for us, our technology is based on drone and robotic technology. We didn't grow in this sector. So we've brought ideas into the sector, and likewise, they've explained some of their major issues. So that constant sharing of your idea is really important. One of the things we want to do is, as you can tell, we want to color code the cities of the world. And the reason why we want to do that is we want to change the way people interact with the cities to be the same for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie. That's so cool. I'm really excited to see where this continued mapping takes us. And I want to give you an extra big shout out because I know you are joining us from literally the other side of the world. So if the audience members have any questions for Natalie, please feel free to throw them into the chat or the Q&A box. But, you know, I will kick it off here with our very first one. I want to know what inspired you to start Briometrix. Was it a family member, personal experience? How did you identify this need for mapping in this area?
Yeah, we're doing actually research on a new wheelchair product. And so we always had to take the product out into the field. And that's what I never assumed, and we do use the term a lot, as an able-bodied person, it is so easy to get around the city. But when you're surrounded by people who are, there's about 6 or 7 people moving around in wheelchairs, you just realize you'd be walking ahead and realize that they were literally almost becoming a prisoner on the footpath. So they would get stuck because they couldn't get down a curb. We would have to double back around. What was a 5-minute trip for me was a 20-minute trip for them. And I started to realize, and I kept looking at my phone and my navigation and saying, well, we can go this way, and realizing it just wasn't working. So we started to think about it. It seemed, why couldn't we actually resolve this problem? Why couldn't we make it that we've got all this public transport? Why can't they enjoy everything that's happening in the city? So that's why we decided to get involved. We understood the wheelchair and how it moved and thought it's a good proxy for everything else in the city that's moving on wheels. And we're watching delivery robots come in, and we're watching e-scooters come in and seeing the injuries. So we thought it made sense. If it's moving and it's on small wheels, we should be following it.
Oh, love that. And you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen. That way we can see your beautiful face. Melissa from the audience says she applauds your work. We have so many opportunities to use this big data and improve this in the lives of people with different abilities. So just wanted to share that awesome sentiment from her. How many cities have you mapped thus far?
So far we've done 15 cities, and they've all been different sizes. And the people who've called us in, it's either been, we've done it with transport authorities, we've done it with councils, we've done all the parklands, say within the city of Sydney. Mm-hmm. So, and we've got now we're coming out of the coronavirus over here. Right. So we've actually got some very good growth and projects happening. And we've also done a project with Indigo, which was fabulous. So we actually do the whole transport line. So if you imagine you put a radius around a transport line and you measure that first mile, last mile coming into a transport stop. So we had the privilege of working with Indigo on their purple line, and that was fantastic.
Oh, that is awesome. And then how do you decide on those locations that you deploy in or have mapped thus far?
Okay, so we've actually got the different cities are calling us in to do that. So a city call you in for different reasons. Like for Melbourne, they wanted to increase ridership around transport ridership around the arts precinct and the sports precinct. That's where everyone comes and enjoys the city. We've had other areas where they want to increase their parklands, so they want people to get back out and enjoy that. So the city picks it, and then we work with them to say, okay, where does everyone come in? Where is that transport stop? And then we look at the destinations to come in from there to those major areas they want to go. So we literally do it a little bit like stakes and ladders. We kind of arrive at a particular stop, go up to the point of interest or go up to the destination and follow those routes with them.
Very cool. David in the audience says he loves the meaning of the word Brio, but help us understand the meaning of your brand and how did you come up with Briometrix?
Okay, so Brio actually means with vitality, with gusto, and with life. It's like con brio. Yeah. And so, and metrics is to measure. So we're actually about giving people the opportunity to get out, to live, and it's lively. Quite often you'll see things in cities, it's all about, for anyone who has limited mobility or moving around, it's like, you can't go here, you can't go there. This is not safe for wheelchairs. This is not safe for people on mobility scooters. what we wanted was the independence. So what we do is we present all the data and say, yeah, this is a difficult area, but it doesn't mean you can't go through it. This may be an area of caution, but it doesn't mean you can't go through it. It depends on your skills and ability. So Brio was always behind that independence, enjoy, gusto. Yeah.
Oh, love that. You spent a little time speaking to us about the different stakeholders and how, lesson learned in improving that communication method. But what's an example of a helpful stakeholder for you if you were to go after a new pilot?
Okay, one who's a really helpful stakeholder is usually people who are doing urban planning. They're a great stakeholder because they're looking at the bigger picture and generally have that connection. But we find in this, it can be really anyone from access and inclusion will talk to us, infrastructure guys will want to talk to us because they want a new perspective about how to look at a city. So they often struggle with being able to show people what they're trying to deal with. So they like the visualization of the map. So it's really been a really open basket of people who come and talk to us.
Oh, I love that. Well, final question for you. I really enjoyed the way you talked about accessible tourism and how that is such, an interesting new method that our cities and communities can really engage and bring awareness to. What are some methods for us audience members to go do that and bring awareness for accessible tourism in our own communities?
Yeah, I think people really don't realize the spending power of the accessible community. So sometimes it's looking at like walkability studies will tell you that people will spend 6 times more if they're actually walking to a retail area, which because they've dropped the car. So I think with accessible tourism, we're just saying to people, again, this is 30% of the population that is keen to come in. They have great spending power. It's about they exactly the same as what we want to do. You want to go out, you want to have a good time, there's events, there's no difference. So I think it's us now just normalizing those sort of things and saying, if everyone can get in, then that's really the point.
Oh, love that. Thank you so much, Natalie, for bringing that to us. Really appreciate you dialing in so early on your end of the world.
Thanks so much.
Yes. And now we're going to welcome our third and final presenter, Jacob, who is the VP of Americas for LiftTango, a technology that powers convenient, efficient, and sustainable shared transport.
Thanks very much, Alison. Just set up here. There we go. So thank you, everyone, for having us. So yeah, my name is Jacob Gregg. I look after LiftTango's US division. A little bit of a history on us, and want to talk to you about a case study that we did quite close to home in Michigan, and a bit that we've learned from that. So our vision really is, there's a huge movement in the world to change the way that we move and the way that we power ourselves. We know we need to do this because we are making our planet uninhabitable for us. So there's a lot driving it. So our vision within all of this is to use technology really to unlock all the good that can come from shared transport. So getting people out of driving on their own, which is predominantly the way that we travel around our cities, and starting to embrace shared modes of transit, and thus reducing the congestion on our roads and the emissions associated with car use. So we do that through 2 major technology platforms and some services that support it. So our technology enables carpooling as one of our major services. So people who share a common organization, whether that be a university, a large corporate, a hospital, a business park, setting up a carpooling network for them to find others to share with and to share their ride very easily, and then working with those corporations to provide incentives for people to do so, whether that's carpool parking, discounted parking, things that basically improve your trip and incentivize you to make the decision to just share that trip as opposed to driving on your own. Our other platform, which I'm going to talk, sort of show you a bit of a case study on today, is our on-demand bus platform. So enabling bus services and shuttle services to run in a demand responsive way. So you can start to eliminate the need for fixed routes and fixed stops, take the guesswork out of running a bus and shuttle service, and start to open up to dynamic booking and routing enabling buses to go to people where they need them, when they need them, and therefore increase, I guess, the appeal of them and the efficiency of those services. So we've expanded from our starting in Australia about 4 years ago. We now have offices in the US, Canada, the UK, and Brazil, and really work with a range of clients from, those large employers, community transport groups, transit agencies, and transit operators as well on a global basis. So a case study I wanted to share with you up in Calhoun County, which is in the middle of Michigan. We worked there. We started a service up in March with Battle Creek Transit. So it was a pilot, funding provided by the state of Michigan, as well as I think some federal funding. Quite an ambitious undertaking, actually. So one of the biggest service zones we've ever seen set up for an on-demand service. So the whole county is part of the service, and through this app, through our app, you can call a bus from anywhere in the county to take you to anywhere in the county. So completely door-to-door service. Some real challenges. This shouldn't work, is what the transport planners will tell you. There's not enough density in this region. The service area is too large, and we decided to launch it, right when, we were under COVID conditions. But credit to the team up there for understanding their community and some lessons that we've learned really in the, the advantages of technology and what it can do to the appeal of a service. It's been quite successful. So we've had 1,500 users sign up. To give that a bit of scale, it's 1% of the population of the county within 6 months, which is remarkably high uptake rate for a service like this. There's been 5,000 trips completed, and this is really using 2 vans that at the moment are restricted to only 4 seats each at a time. So basically the buses have been full since about week 2 of the service. And importantly, I think we've tapped into an unmet demand. So there's been 10,000 more trips that have been requested that we weren't able to meet because of the capacity constraints. So there's really a lot of people who need this service. And when we compare this to some services we've run globally in areas that should be more, more effective and have better results, they haven't achieved the sort of uptake that they have up here. And I guess the learnings for us, there's really something around geography. The rural and semi-urban areas of our communities, which really makes up the predominance of the US, have significant unmet transport needs. They're relying on Uber or Lyft, or if Uber or Lyft doesn't exist in the town, they don't have it, or they're relying on driving on their own. So there's a huge unmet need here that can be tapped into. The service design has a lot to do with whether people will use it. So in theory, Battle Creek has offered a door-to-door service up there for many, many years, but you have to ring in 24 hours in advance, very clunky service around how to book and then have the vehicles moved there. All we've done is make it so that it's very convenient. You download an app, you can book within the hour, a bus can be there. And suddenly there's been significant increase in the uptake. So there is something around the way that you offer a service. The communication, so they got the messaging right. They understood their constituents. They understood how to speak to them. So the awareness was very large from day one. Right sizing the pilot. So I think this is something that we learned that we would redo if we had another chance at the pilot, in that with 2 vehicles and the scope of the service being quite small, and we see this with a lot of pilots, they're actually set out in a way they're too small, really. And thus, this being so small, we can't really show how this could become financially sustainable, in that, if we added just 1 more vehicle, we could actually triple the amount of people that could use this service. So there's things like that to consider in a pilot. Is, are we setting it up and making it large enough that it can show, a path to financial and sort of business stability. And then finally, integration has just come up as a huge theme in this. So we've started to bring other community service operators onto the service who've all been trying to use their own technology and their own call centers at huge expense. And so there's great opportunities here from a technology point of view to start to bring services together. So that's it from me. Really appreciate all the work that Bamboo is doing and the MEDC, and thanks for involving us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jacob, for sharing. So many great opportunities for piloting and I'm really excited to see it happening here in our backyard, just 2 hours down I-94. If any audience members have any questions for Jacob, please drop them into the chat function for us. But to kind of kick us off, you had mentioned, especially in the part 1 of LiftTango, you've really penetrated and focused on shared organizations where ride sharing makes sense. How do you penetrate those or find those, bring awareness to them about your services?
Yes, it's I think we've learnt different ways. I think there's in the US, you've got the transport demand management groups who kind of sit at a regional level, sometimes at a state level, who do terrific work in kind of centralizing the engagement with large corporations. They do a lot around corporate outreach, teaching them about different things they could do from a mobility point of view, and have funding that they can tap into as well. So that's a great source of kind of consolidation that you have here in the US. I think we've started to see a lot of interest from the commercial real estate world as well. So the facility managers globally are starting to, particularly with COVID, they've started to understand that they play a fairly important role in not just providing buildings, but providing an experience to the people that use those buildings. So there's a lot of interest from the real estate groups globally around how they can support commuting and provide kind of a suite of services to the tenants within their buildings. And what's great about that is that they can, represent 50 organizations that may be in a shared tenancy. And so there's great economies of scale and benefits that come from that.
Absolutely. I guess this kind of ties into Pushkar's question. Is he asked, do you have a subscription-based model, or I can elaborate, or how would you charge one of those real estate developers or a large company?
Yeah, so typically we do a subscription-based model. So for our carpool solution, it's usually works out as a sort of an annual amount that an organization or a central facility group pays, and then it's free to use for the end users. On the bus side, it's usually charged at a sort of per vehicle per month, seems to be the industry standard. We are very open to kind of volume-based pricing as well, but we've just never had anyone decide to do that yet. But we are exploring with some companies. They're looking at sort of prices based on the number of trips that their people take and things like that. But generally, yeah, it's a subscription-based model.
Awesome. And kind of moving into like the pilot part of LiftTango, part 2, the on-demand bus platform, that is really unique. Did you guys come up with that, or was really a marketplace demand for that service?
Yes, I think it's probably an emerging technology and service globally. We're probably one of about a dozen players globally who are doing this, and it's probably, I would say it's been in serious use globally in the last 2 years. Probably started about 4 years ago with people trying these things out, and it's gradually moved from kind of this little sort of sandpit style trying little pilots into becoming a kind of fundamental of a lot of transit agencies in the way that they're looking at their services. I guess Uber and Lyft in a way kind of pioneered the concept for us, and now there's a lot of us bringing it to shuttles and buses. So
love that. I guess before we dive into the Battle Creek specific example, it sounds like there's so many, urban metro areas that could definitely benefit from your service. How do they find you, or how do you find them for these pilots or specific testing?
I think that's probably one of the trickiest parts as a startup, actually, is especially in the US, where you've got a very fragmented transit service. You've got probably sort of 1,500 transit agencies in the US, I think. To give that a bit of scale, there's 7 in Australia, there's 1 per state. So it's very, very fragmented here, and all of them have different procurement processes and systems. I think there's a lot of great work being done. So, you take the state of Michigan, huge amount of work being done at a state level to bring that together, to bring the thinking together, to consolidate the funding as well as the kind of the purchasing as well. So there's federal funding, there's state funding, and those grant processes often focus in on a theme. And that's a good way that we found it. So that was how we found Battle Creek, is they gained funding through a state-based funding service that was put up a couple of years ago, and we understood they'd won the funding and reached out to them. So it's either us working with transit agencies to help unlock funding, or responding to that when they've received it.
Very cool. In that specific pilot, you kind of mentioned that the team really understood their community well. For other communities who might be looking to engage with a pilot or a service like this, what skills lend well to understanding their community? What can we do in advance before deploying a pilot like this?
So I think when we've worked with, I guess they had the benefit of living in this community for a long time. It's a relatively small community, so they understood them. But I think when you don't have that, you have maybe larger communities. Where we've seen it work well is if you put the time into community engagement sessions, you run focus groups, you put out surveys, you look for those key groups in the community as well. So, who are your users most likely to be? It's often those who either for economic reasons or other factors can't use their own vehicle. I mean, in the US, unfortunately, it's if you can use a vehicle, you do generally in our cities, even though it shouldn't be that way. But there are people who really need these services, the elderly, etc. So engaging those groups and the people that represent them is really key up front, because they will be your larger user groups and really inform the way that you design and market the service from there.
Awesome. Last question. What were the things that kept you up at night throughout the pilot? What were some of the biggest concerns?
Oh, I think there's the nervousness around the first day, right? You just want to make sure that you're getting matches, that people are getting on the vehicles. Knowing that, I think the biggest fear we had was that because the area was so big and the capacity of the vehicles was so small, that we would get a lot of frustrated passengers because they simply aren't able to get a match. So to a certain extent, we have seen a lot of people, there's a lot more people wanting the service than are able to get it. But in a way, that's great for Battle Creek. They're using that data. They're doing outreach to certain people to understand their needs, as well as I think it's providing fuel for them to get initial funding to grow the service. So I think that was some of the things that, as a technology provider, you just want to make sure it works and people like using it. And then that, then it's the flip side of, oh my goodness, there's too many people using it. What can we do to help them? So.
Great lessons. Thank you so much, Jacob. Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And a big thank you to all of our presenters. These are many great lessons shared for others in our industry. So hopefully we have some great takeaways for that. In our chat, we're going to share our community networking sheet. This sheet allows us to asynchronously network. So please fill it out if you feel like it. Name, email, LinkedIn, some help asks or areas of expertise. We can follow up directly with you, and you can follow up with your fellow attendees this evening. So that will be in the chat just momentarily. This event would not have been made possible without the awesome support of our friends at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Charlie from their team is going to take the final minutes of tonight's event to share more information about how you can get funds to host your own pilot here in the state of Michigan.
All right, thank you so much, Allison and the Bamboo team, along with the Michigan Central team and all of the presenters today. As Allison mentioned, I'm Charlie Tyson. I'm with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MEDC. However, I'm part of a unique office called the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, or OFME. OFME, I'll share my screen here. I'm gonna jump into a presentation. Excuse me. All right, my apologies. As mentioned, I'm part of the Michigan's Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. I'm a technology activation manager. So In my role, I spend a lot of time connecting solution providers to entities in Michigan that have a need for mobility solutions. And we see mobility as more than just automotive. We see it as the way we move people and goods from point A to point B by air, land, or sea. It's kind of the way I like to give an overview of mobility, because it encompasses much more than just the automotive sector, although the automotive sector is a key economic contributor to the state of Michigan, of course. So a little bit about this office. This was created almost 2 years ago now through an executive order established by Governor Whitmer in effort to create a stronger state economy through more equitable and environmentally conscious transportation for all Michigan residents. Not only do we want to create jobs and investments in Michigan, we also want to improve the quality of life by improved transportation. We have 6 core objectives. 1, we want to grow the mobility industry, OEMs and tier 1s, ensuring they stay in Michigan, they hire locally. We also want to continue to engage more mobility startups, working with partners like Bamboo, Michigan Central, and New Lab, for example. We want to continue to expand Michigan's smart infrastructure. It's imperative to create a safe transportation network by improving the infrastructure that enables it. We want to accelerate electric vehicle adoption. It's a huge trend right now we're seeing, and we want to be there to lay a foundation to not only allow companies to thrive that are working on electrification, but allow the end consumer, enable the end consumer to purchase an electric vehicle and to get wherever they want to go. We also want to enable Michigan's mobility workforce. This is critical. We want to retain talent coming out of our top universities. We want to attract entrepreneurs from around the world, creating an ecosystem where individuals can thrive, creating an ecosystem where those that need to obtain additional education can do so. Maybe they are a little bit older, and we want them to find ways to access the education they need to meet the growing needs in the marketplace. And then we want to bolster Michigan's manufacturing core. We have a tremendous network and landscape of manufacturers, tier 2s, tier 3s, mom and pop machine shops. We want to ensure that they remain competitive and find ways to meet the ever-changing and always innovative global market. What's unique about this office, which has really stemmed from a former program through MEDC called Planet M, this office is a coordinating body to support key state agencies in Michigan. Of course, MDOT, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, LEO, EAGLE, Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, and then MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation. A lot of acronyms, I know, but this is a really exciting thing for the state of Michigan to have, as we can be more coordinated to ensure more productivity and really better services and resources for our economy. So as part of this office, we have multiple individuals and team members that work in different agencies. So I am been with MEDC for almost 5 years now, and really passionate about the work we're doing in the state. OFME, Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, offers the following services to businesses. We have a grant program, which I'll make sure to double down on through this presentation. We spend a lot of time making connections. We want to be there to help identify potential partnerships and be there to facilitate those introductions. We see public-private partnerships being a key driver for the mobility industry. We also have policy support. This is done through what's called the Council on Future Mobility and Electrification. This is a council made up of public and private sector entities that strategize and come up with legislative recommendations for policies that can make sure that we have an attractive economy and market for global companies looking to grow here in Michigan, but also to ensure that we have a safe transportation system. And then industry intelligence, being on important and fun, to be honest, events like this, providing benchmarking, conducting research. So I'd be happy to talk about these different services one-on-one if anyone in the audience has any interest. I'm going to go through some of these quickly. Some of our early wins within this office was, one was the COVID-19 Mobility Solutions Grant. This was a grant program that helped deploy solutions to offset challenges related to COVID-19 within the transportation market. So this photo here is a company out of Michigan that deployed an autonomous robot that disinfected the airport in Grand Rapids. They are now working in the Detroit airport along with LaGuardia in New York. We were able to help facilitate a partnership between Alphabet and Ford. It's a joint venture called Coven to create a dedicated autonomous vehicle lane between Detroit and Ann Arbor. Multi-year initiative, going to be a huge opportunity for the state and companies to get involved, but also to create a safer, roadway for that can be an example for other regions throughout the world. Help deploy autonomous shuttles at Detroit Medical Center to move patients from one facility to another. And then we're working to establish the digital infrastructure to enable drone deliveries. We just announced the first automated parking garage in the United States in partnership with Ford, Bosch, the state of Michigan, and Bedrock. This automated valet parking facility, if you will, essentially it is a parking garage where companies working on parking technology can work with potential partners and customers and really test and validate and scale their technologies in Michigan. We're working with Michigan Tech's Great Lakes Research Center to support one of the leading maritime test beds in the United States, really globally as well. Working on how to make freight movement more efficient, or underwater vessels or electric vessels, electric ferries, for example, a grant program to offset costs for companies working on those technologies that can work with Michigan Tech as well. Partner with Plug and Play, and supported a partnership between Plug and Play Detroit and Stellantis, and another accelerator in Michigan, key to helping startups get to the state of Michigan for to thrive and to hopefully continue their growth. And then the Council on Future Mobility and Electrification, as I mentioned. The Council on Future Mobility and Electrification, we put out a report every year. The 2020 report is available. I'll see if we can share this slide deck. Otherwise, you can access everything by visiting the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification website. Most pertinent to the conversation today, we about 6 months ago launched what's called the Michigan Mobility Funding Platform. This is a grant program to help mobility and electrification companies deploy their technology solutions in the state of Michigan, both at test sites and in real world environments. We're focused on solutions that address issues related to sustainability, equitability, and multimodal transportation. We have two arms to this application or this funding platform, as mentioned: a real world deployment, essentially pilot projects, and then also we have a test site deployment. We have a network of test sites. I mentioned the automated parking garage, the maritime test site. We have a handful of other ones as well, including the ground-based autonomous vehicle test sites at U of M's M-City and American Center for Mobility, and even drone test sites through the Michigan Unmanned Aerial Space Consortium. This is a rolling application. You can apply at any time. Although it's a rolling application, we do have internal review periods. So we have 3 rounds of internal review. Our next round is actually going to begin. Next round of review will begin next week, and applicants will be notified whether they've been accepted or rejected by late October or early November. Again, if you have a project, a use case that you can work on here in Michigan, one of the key criterias for the real world deployment or pilot projects is that the applicant identifies a use case, a mobility challenge here in Michigan, and most notably has a mobility stakeholder that's based in Michigan that has a role in the project. And that could be a transit agency, it can be a university, an OEM automaker, an investor, for example, any entity that has a stake in the project and it has interest in partnering on the pilot project or real world deployment. We really encourage you all, those in attendance and those that are able to share this to their network. We are always looking for applications. We're always open to connecting with individual or companies or entrepreneurs one-on-one to talk through the platform and the grant program and to see if we can be helpful in identifying an important project in a use case and essentially a partner as well in Michigan. But we have seen that it's difficult due to our team's bandwidth. So as much as you can do to get out there and network amongst public and private partners here in Michigan, the better chances are that you'll find a project that is qualified for the Michigan Mobility Funding Platform. Most recently, I know I'm getting close on time. We recently announced our first round of the platform's grant recipients. Green Route, Ann Arbor-based company, is working with DT Energy to route the most energy efficient through mapping, doing routing to increase energy efficiencies for DT Energy's customers in their fleet. Move, a company working on accessible transportation, is working with Washtenaw Alliance for Virtual Education to provide public high school students ride-hailing service, those that are in really remote parts of the county. Working with our Airspace Link, a startup out of Detroit, is working with the Henry Ford Health System, along with Matternet, Workhorse Group, Mission Go, to deliver vital medical supplies between facilities on the Henry Ford campus. And then Michigan Flyer is working to tackle missed bus connections, something that we usually don't think about, of course, because there's Uber or Lyft. However, there is a gap in that service. Oftentimes individuals are trying to get to the airport or get to an important destination at times where they can't access that transportation immediately, or it's hard for them to book ahead of time. And Michigan Flyer is working on a software and a service to address that challenge. And then Flint-based Commute is working on a multimodal charging hub, working with in Flint for this pilot project, the City of Flint, Kettering University, University of Michigan, Nissan, and Helbiz to provide last mile electric vehicles and the ability to charge these different modes of vehicles in one setting, as you can see in this photo. So here are the Michigan Mobility Funding Platform Round 1 recipients. I really appreciate Bamboo's time, and I will pause there. And that's all I got today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Charlie. Real quick, as we close out, what is the range of funding grants available? Somebody asked in the chat.
Sure. That's always a tough question, right? So we don't have a max and we don't have a minimum. I know that doesn't tell you much, but let's just say that over the last year or two with our grant program, grants have ranged from about $25,000 to $150,000.
Great range. Perfect.
Yep. And if you can identify matching funds, that does increase the chances to obtain more funding.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Charlie. We look forward to seeing more of these great pilots in addition to the first round of ones that were awarded done here in our great state. Maybe more will be like LiftTango happening just down the road.
Absolutely.
We'll see. All right. Thank you all for coming out this evening. If you'd like the presentations or topics discussed here tonight, you're in luck. We'll be doing this again soon. We typically do this event every quarter, and hopefully we'll have a new upcoming mobility panel for you in the coming month. Please remember to check out the community networking sheet live in the chat. The sheet is an active way to connect afterwards. Leave your LinkedIn, areas of helps and expertise. And it also looks like our, presenters were open to connecting on LinkedIn. So feel free to ask your follow-up questions and reach out to them there. We look forward to hosting you again at future events later this fall and winter. Have a great evening.